Welcome to the Select Star Podcast, your resource for innovative technology, developer topics, and more. Here's your host, Margo McCabe from the HarperDB team.
Welcome, everyone, to the first official episode of the HarperDB podcast, Select Star. Today we have two HarperDB team members on. I'll be interviewing two of our co-founders. We have Kyle Bernhardy and Zach Fowler. Zach is our Chief Product Officer and Kyle is our Chief Technology Officer. And just wanted to chat with them a little bit about kind of the origins of HarperDB, hear a little bit about, what we've accomplished so far, what we're looking forward to next year, and chat about a couple other just general topics in tech and software development. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Margo. Happy to be here.
Good to be here. Virtually here.
Exactly.
BE here.
Awesome. Well, to kick it off, I'm curious to just hear from both of you a little bit about your background in general, kind of how you met, how the HarperDB team came together. I know sometimes that's a fun story to tell.
I guess, Zach, I'll go first.
Yeah, you were
I have the longer history.
Agreed.
Cool. So Steven and I met, I think it's 10 years ago, so it's been a decade. I was working as a full-time employee at a company called CoreSite in downtown Denver, and Steven was a consultant doing CoreSite's Salesforce implementation, and they were transitioning the project over to me. So Steven and I spent a full month together in a small conference room, and worked together on, transitioning, just like knowledge transfer of what he had done so far, as well as finishing up further work. And I think if you get to spend a month with someone in a small room and you still get along, like, that's a good sign. And, Steve and I, not just, it wasn't just that we worked well together, we also became friends through that process. But, after that project and he rolled off, we obviously stayed friends and had talked about working together in the future. About a year later, Steven had started a consulting firm, and I was brought on as his first employee, as a lead engineer. And then Fred Yoon, who's one of our other co-founders, was one of our first employees. And Steven and Fred were on a plane together coming back from San Francisco, and they were talking technology, and they just really connected. The company that Fred was working for, Fizzle, needed technical resources. They had been off basically farming out their technical work, and Fred realized they needed to start bringing it in-house. But they weren't quite there yet, so we were doing some of their work as consultants, which then leads into Zach. So Zach, I'll open it up to you to talk about your origin story with Steven, Fred, and myself.
Yeah, that was the nexus. So the long and short is I went to college, then I dropped out, then I met a girl. She sent me back to college. And then after I finished college, I went back into the trees working as an arborist and started putting out resumes. Steven and his team brought me in for an interview. They still make fun of me to this day about how nervous I was during that interview process. When Steven tells you to not be nervous, it's hard to not to continue to be more nervous as he lurches forward into your face. Don't be nervous. And so that's how I got started as a junior developer at the consulting company Steven started. And from there on, we met Kyle. We all vibed well. We all had our own silo of unique information that we shared, and it just pushed things forward. We didn't know what we didn't know, and we would just do anything that we could do that we thought was awesome. And we all liked doing it that way. Then Fred found us and brought us even closer together on a bigger project, and that brought us even that put us in a boiling pot, and you learn a lot about each other when you're all very under a lot of pressure, and if you can get along after being under that kind of pressure with each other, you can basically get along with you'll be able to get along forever because you just understand everybody's edges.
Yeah, I would also say too, Jake Cohen, who is doing our project management, he was an intern for us at the time at that same consulting company as CloudRoot was the company's name. So, we sort of had this synthesis that the company, before we all moved on together to Fizzle, that company sort of was like the wet concrete before it started solidifying. And it's really cool to see, like, obviously the core team has stayed together and we've picked up people along the way that have also gelled with us, which has been pretty great. Zach reminded me too, I forgot to do quickly, I guess, like what my background is. I just jumped into like how we all met. And so I studied exercise and sports science at Penn State. And then thankfully it was the late 90s with the tech boom, and they were hiring just about anyone that could like learn, didn't necessarily need. At the time I was in Boston, and the resources for tech were pretty tight. So they were hiring really anyone off the streets if you had some smarts, some cases not smarts. But I started out in tech support, just bottom of the barrel, grinding it out for 2 years in tech support, and took some classes in programming. I knew that I wanted to build things. I wanted to have that creative expression plus logical expression. I feel like engineering and programming specifically has this really unique meld of creativity plus using like science. And that really appealed to me, and I took classes. I'm primarily self-taught, and I've learned a lot from a lot of people along the way. And yeah, just like I've had good managers, I've had good coworkers, and I've had good employees. And just along the way, I've just continued to just absorb the information from as many people as I can to just keep learning. But also, to continue a little bit of the story about like how we all met. Like obviously you heard how we met, and then we got hired by Fizzle, and that was Steven, Zach, myself at that point. And so we came on as like the core engineering team for Fizzle. And that, like Zach said, that was like a real trial by fire. They did big data analytics for sports and entertainment and real-time visualizations. So Zach and I spent a majority of a summer getting ready for and then aggregating every single tweet around the World Cup. That was a really crazy summer. We also did things for like HBO boxing, and you'd be like, well, that sounds fun. But like when it's your technology that's on the screen powering, people at home's voting around who they think is going to win a bout or whatever, and you're praying that the system stays up, because if it goes down, they will just immediately turn off the graphic and you've lost that business. We certainly didn't want to lose something like HBO boxing. So it was stressful, but we learned a lot. And it really just formed the genesis of our company, because at its heart, it was big data. And we created this really complicated data system with multiple databases, a custom middleware, just to try and keep the data flowing in as near real time as possible while doing, natural language processing and all this other data aggregation. It was just super complicated. And that's really what created the foundation of the vision for HarperDB, which is simplicity while still being able to do work with your data, but not put the onus so much on the engineers that are trying to create something unique to them and not have to spend a majority of your time and money managing this big data pipeline. When we started HarperDB, like I was saying, we sort of picked up people along the way. Kaylin was doing product management for us at Fizzle, and so it was Stephen Goldberg, Fred Yoon, Zachary Fowler, myself, and Kaylin were the first people that came on to HarperDB, and we're all brave souls that are still here almost 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
4 years.
Seems like the stars have aligned, and you guys make some interesting points. I think both of you alluded to kind of the fact that the whole team has a history and has been through a lot together. And Zach, as you said, if you can make it this far, what can't you make it through? And I think for me, being almost coming up to my 2-year anniversary with the HarperDB team, I think back to my first impression of when I met everyone was, wow, these people are super geniuses. But also my second thought was, you can tell that these are just really nice, genuine people, which I think is so important probably to HarperDB's success, and the fact that there's been so little drama and so little turnover. And as you said, that people have stuck it through. When you have 4 founders, sometimes that can be complicated. And I think it's really cool to see the teamwork and just the excitement that has continued to build, and that lack of a lot of the drama you hear with tech startups.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I've had some good conversations with friends that have started their own companies or been very early stage companies. And that's really become clear to me too, that we're really unique in the sense that we do have, like, founder drama is a real thing in startups. And obviously everyone's deeply invested. It's not just because people are petty or trying to hurt other people. It's because they're invested. But I feel like the drama can come out of really misalignment. So people don't truly have the same vision. They don't have the same values or the same mission. And that's really what's critical to a company, any company, but early stage companies especially, because you're creating something from nothing. So having a clearly defined mission, vision, values, and having everyone that are key members of the team to start, and then really every member afterwards, it has to resonate with those people. Because if it doesn't, that's where it creates conflict. Because it drives your decision making, or at least it should drive your decision making. So if you're ever in a position where you're like, well, what should we do? You can always refer back to your mission, your vision, and your values. And then that should at least give you some guideposts to at least how you're going to choose what to do next. But we've really been unique in the sense of, one, having really a cohesive team. That's not to say that we don't disagree, but like Zach said, we know how, what our languages are, and we know how we, when we get mad, how do you communicate to someone when they get triggered, right? And how can I turn into their ally when it seems like we're in conflict at this point in time? And also how not to be avoidant, but it's just if I do this, I know this person's going to react in this way, so maybe I'll approach it in a different way. And I think that's helpful in not just for founders, but any relationship that you have is
I'd say that about my relationship.
Is understanding that other person and having clear communication, just super important. We're humans, right? And even when we're doing business together and work together, we're still human. Doesn't change anything.
Yeah, that's
Zach,
really good.
No, I agree with all that. I think it was paramount into us jumping from company to company because we began to understand our limitations, our triggers, our understanding of, that person's not in the mood to talk about this, I'm going to wait. Things like that prevents conflicts. And, you can wait a day and then reapproach something. And I think that has been good for all of us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would say too, for anyone that's thinking about starting a company, and you're going to bring someone else in, spend some time with that person, get to know that person. It can be challenging, but like I also have had a lot of personal growth through the joys and the trials that I've had with not just my co-founders, but everyone in the company. Like I've learned things from everybody. That's not just because we've always had good times, right? We've had hard times too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important reminder too. Awesome. Cool. Well, one of the next things I was wondering is what's it like going from a technical or software developer background to being in the management role and becoming co-founders. So, kind of pros and cons of that, and balancing, doing the technical work that you need, but also the management duties that you have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Certainly, I'll start that one off. To be perfectly honest, it's a lot of work. Like any startup book that I've ever read or that you've ever read, it's a lot of work. Takes a lot of perseverance. You need to be organized. You need to have co-founders that you can work with and employees that you can. I mean, you hire the employees, but the hiring process is also kind of like a facade. And then you get the person in, and then the person goes under pressure, and then you really start to bubble up their real personality and not their interview / new guy, new employee personality. But going from being in the weeds to adding more things that you need to be technical about. You need to understand marketing. You need to understand sales. You need to understand the personas that you're marketing to. And it is a lot of work, but having capable co-founders and employees helps you distribute and helps you create more ideas instead of just your own repeating in your head. Because even I get into circuits, and the only thing to really break me out of my circuits is new questions and new perspectives. And so that just helps you push things forward, so you're not getting tunnel vision. And even though it's hard work, it's extremely rewarding. Doing ideation and design and research and conferences, like when we had conferences that were real. I loved being at the conferences and traveling for the conferences and talking to all the people who would just walk up to you and be like, "What's HarperDB?" And you would just start saying the words, and the words became more real. Every person, every interaction that came back to you, they're like, "Oh," the next day they come back, "Wow, I checked out HarperDB. This is a really neat project. This is a great project. I'm really excited that you guys built this." And it becomes less ephemeral and more solid. And now, almost 4 years later, it's gone from nothing to a 20+ person business, and that's been the reward for that is I don't have much to describe it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think, so from going from like an individual contributor to a founder and leading a team, it's been the most challenging thing I've ever done. It's also been the biggest opportunity for growth that I've ever had. It's forced me, like, to be really honest, in the first 6 months, I think one of the things I struggled with the most was dealing with the weight of making decisions. And that sounds like so small, but it freaked like and I'm CTO. So the technical decisions are a majority mine. My approach to leadership is more like power with, not power over. And what that means is like, I'm going to work with people. I'm not going to dictate top down. But even still, the decision is still ultimately mine. So I will still like aggregate information, get people's consensus, but ultimately the decision is mine. And I really felt the weight of that, from technical decisions, because realizing what we decide now determines the path forward. That also carried forward in things like, what's our 401k going to look like? And what is our marketing messaging looking like? Because with 5 people, we were all doing that. And so having all that input together, for me, that carried, I put a lot of pressure on myself. What that really exposed to me was like really a lack of self-confidence. And that's not to say that like, well, I'm some like alpha person that'll be like, I just make all the best decisions now. I still make bad decisions. But I try to temper it. And I'm also okay now realizing that it's not all on me. I have a team that I can rely on, and they will also tell me when I'm wrong, and I will listen to them. And I also own up to when I'm wrong and I made a mistake. And I'll try and make it as right as I can in those situations, because again, we're all human. But that was very challenging. You know, managing staff has been very challenging at times. We have a really good team, and we have a team that really works together. And so I feel really fortunate in the sense that when we're talking about founder drama, there's minimal founder drama. There's also minimal staff drama. I think we found a way to like understand who are the people that we really enjoy working with. Because in the past, we had a really hard time differentiating those people, right? And it's not to say that there's good people and bad people. There's people that work better together, and there's some people, and there's environments too. So there's the personalities, there's the approach, but there's also the environment. So a startup is a very intense scenario, and especially very early on, it's very intense because the stakes are high. You don't have very high runways. You need to get out to market quick. You also need to be making like decisions you make may have like a hair's breadth margin of success. And for some people that works really well. Like some people work really well under pressure, and they're able to work like that brings out the best in them. For other people, that brings out the worst in them. And so we've started determining how, like, and it's not like we have a magic equation, but in this last tranche of hiring, like Margo, when you came on, and Aaron and David and Sam, like we had this awesome, like I call it like a class of employees, and like every single person was excellent. Every single person has very, like, while you are all different, you all are like similar in the sense of like you are like you have your own defined personality. It's not like you're just like, whatever you want from me, boss, I'm good to go. But like you have your own approach, but you're also willing, you're adaptable, eager to learn, and believe in what we're doing. I mean, it's super reductive, but like those are some of the things that like when I hired like Aaron and David both, they were like not trying to talk me out of hiring them, but they were sort of like, well, I don't have a ton of experience in exactly what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't care. I can, like, you are a good person. You want to learn, and you're smart, and I like you. And I'm psyched to work with you. And I know we can bridge that extra gap. And the thing is, like, for Aaron and David both as examples, like their experience from before has really helped us moving forward. And so while they felt like they didn't know what it was that we're trying to achieve, is like building a new database and all this other stuff, like their knowledge base from the past has really helped push us forward. And even though they felt otherwise, we proved them wrong.
That imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It's real.
Yeah, I mean, it's so challenging but rewarding, I think, is the real short answer after I said many, many words.
That's fair. Yeah, I think both of you have the similar consensus of challenging yet rewarding, and a learning process. And when you were talking, Kyle, about just the pressure of management and the decision making, it was reminding me of one of the best managers I ever had. It was kind of my first boss when I got a real job after college, real job in quotes. But I remember one time I made a mistake and was feeling, really bad about it, thinking, oh, what could I have done differently? And I had a meeting with my manager at the time, and he said something like, in a position like mine, when you're leading a team, when your employee makes a mistake, it's important for me to go back to the drawing board and see where I could have trained differently, or what I could have done wrong, or like what gaps I could have filled in. So it was so cool that he took a lot of that weight on his shoulders. Obviously, that's not always the best case if you have someone that's messing up left and right or not paying attention, or, but it was just awesome to see, and I feel like both you, Kyle, and Zach have a similar outlook on it, of taking a lot of the weight on your shoulders, but also giving people the independence to make those mistakes and learn the way they need to.
Yeah. And I think like, especially now with COVID and we're all working from home, like there really is no other way to do this now. And I think it in some ways was what we were already doing, I like to see myself less of like a leader and more of a guide. And so like working with the team and to help them, like I'm a lot of times when they're working on a problem, I'm learning about the problem with them. And, I trust the team we have. We have an amazing team, and I have a ton of trust in them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like, it's not like a situation where I trust, and then when things break down, I'm like, well, this was on you guys. It's exactly what you're saying about your manager, is like, if we messed up, it ultimately is my responsibility. And like, I don't like playing the blame game. It's more like, let's just find out what happened. How did we get here? And how can we do it better? And so the one thing I always like to think about too is we have processes in place. And I don't want to just rip things down just to rip them down, but I'm always looking to do things a little bit differently if it serves us, and do things a little bit better. And like kind of as a sidebar, like we at 10 o'clock every morning, just like almost every engineering team, we do a daily stand up. And especially now with COVID, it's about my favorite time of day. Is like, I get to, see all these faces that I've worked with for years. And it's actually kind of cool because now we're actually in each other's homes a little bit, and we get to see each other's dogs. And sometimes like, a partner walks through the room, you get to say, hey, Jill, or whatever, and like, Zach's daughter is on sometimes. And so, there is like this extra level of intimacy that I think we get to have with each other. Like, it's not like we're just in like a sterile office together. Yeah. And while we're all separate and there are challenges with that too, I do in some ways kind of like this environment that we have where, we get to collaborate, and it's probably unique more to engineering because it's a little bit of a siloed profession to a degree. Like we collaborate, but then we also go off and, code up on our laptops by ourselves and go to Slack and be like, hey, how do I do X? What's wrong with Y? But, it's like this time we've actually refined some of our processes that we probably wouldn't have done otherwise. If we were still in an office, because that being physically together, I think it can mask some of the inefficiencies that you have because you just insert yourself, like you just keep inserting people in and interactions in to overcome the fact that maybe me going to Aaron every time to ask to kick off a build is masking the fact that maybe we should automate that process. And the fact that I have to do it through Slack or get on a call with him, it just exacerbates that process. Right. Just as for example. So
yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. I was just talking about that the other day, about how even though we're all feeling disconnected and a little lonely and siloed with quarantine, there is this new level of kind of global connectedness, and that we're all in this together. And as you said, being in each other's homes, and it's kind of interesting thinking about, the benefits that will come out of it. So I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. But, there's also lots of days where I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I want to quit. Like I don't like, there's like, to be really honest, there's been lots of days where I've struggled.
Yeah.
But lots of days I haven't too.
Yeah. You're human. I think that's common. Great. Well, let's talk a little bit more about HarperDB product itself. I'd love to hear a little, how far HarperDB has come, maybe specifically just in this last year. What are your favorite things about HarperDB currently from a technology perspective? And, what are you most excited for that's going to be coming in 2021? Zach, if you want to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Going from nothing to a database as a service has been an epic journey. We pushed the go button for database as a service in early 2019, and we got it out to the market in let's say May.
You mean early 2020, right? It was like January.
No, you're right. Yeah, early 2020. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, man, that timeline was a lot.
That timeline was long, right? Sorry. We started the database as a service journey early 2020, and we got it out to the market in May of 2020. And it has been running smooth ever since. Every single person was all hands on deck. And that was just an amazing endeavor to endure and to be a part of. I personally helped with the AWS well-architected review because our database as a service is hosted 100% on AWS currently. And those guys gave us a big thumbs up. They thought we did a really good job. And that was good to hear from somebody who is considered a guru in AWS for a bunch of kids scrambling together to put a product out on the market. Smart kids, for that matter.
Also, people with experience. I will say, Zach, like the undertaking that the team did, everyone involved had a lot of experience in AWS.
Yeah.
And building resilient systems.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, it wasn't
blind
people
monkeys.
We weren't blind.
Throwing keys, slapping on our keyboards. Absolutely, yeah. We had a lot of experience in AWS. So that was just like the highlight of 2020. Another thing, since things have stabilized a lot through those endeavors, I have been managing support tickets and clients that are currently using HarperDB, and watching and seeing and being integral in their development of their really awesome projects is just amazing to say, oh, I'm just a small unit to this whole bigger project that they have developed against HarperDB. And, even though we're kind of a crux or a linchpin in that whole distributed application, and I'm helping them push the application farther and further and make it more efficient and more resilient, just working with them and has been an amazing process as well. I just like being a part of those projects. I like seeing our project be a part of those projects. And I'm looking forward to getting it into more hands of more people to reinvigorate that feeling over and over again. Chase that ghost, because that feels good.
Yeah. So I'll repeat what Zach said. The fact that we, at the beginning of this year, in January, we realized that two things. One, we needed a cloud offering. It was feedback that we had gotten from various entities and individuals for a while. But we realized we were really at a point where we needed to, in order to reduce the grit for people to even just get hands on our product, it just had to be push button, had to be as easy as possible and really hands off for them. Because for some people, like they hear it be like, oh, you need to spin up like a Linux VM, you've already lost them. And so the fact that someone can just like go on, click a couple buttons, spins up, it's really in some ways ephemeral for them.
The project
really
was
important.
Called Easy Button.
Called Easy Button, right? And there's like I was just thinking about that this morning, Zach, and I was just like, there was like so much like subcontext to that, because it's almost like tongue in cheek, because in order to make that project happen, it is not an easy button. Like the level
Yeah,
of work
right.
that the team had to do. So that was the beginning of the year, was cloud, like Zach said. And then the other thing too was, while our data model was awesome, our data storage mechanism that facilitated that was not. And it enabled the model, but it did not enable performance. And so really in tandem, so beginning of this year, we determined both of those things. And so cloud is like a greenfield, huge undertaking. And then the data storage mechanism is really like ripping a part of your product down to its studs and then building it back up. It's really like almost like you rip your foundation out from underneath your house and pour new concrete so it's on a stable footing. And so we had to do both, and both were delivered in tandem in May, which is amazing. And like both of those things are my favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like from a technology standpoint, I love our cloud offering. It's facilitated so many conversations. Like Margo, is I'm sure you can attest to, because you're key in a lot of those conversations and the ambassadorship of our product. Like, you know, almost every webinar that we host, people are using our cloud piece. And then also, I don't think we've given enough credit to Jackson, who's built our studio, because I think like when you talk about cloud, like the studio sort of rolled into that. Mm-hmm. But like this super sexy interface, like every time I use it, I'm like, whose product is this? This thing is shiny. Yeah. Like Jackson has just done an amazing job with that. You know, I'm super proud of our enhanced data storage mechanism. That's very selfish on my part because I did it, but I am really proud of that part. But that's also on the shoulders of some amazing people in the community with LMDB, and then the Node community that has built a library around that for us to use. And just some really wonderful people. Like the past couple of weeks have been messaging back and forth with the main maintainer of that, and I'm like, what a great guy.
Really nice guy.
Just a really nice guy. You know, but I think really my favorite thing, not to sound cheesy, my favorite thing about HarperDB is really our team, because we wouldn't have all this technology, we would not have these feature sets, we would not have any of this without the team behind it and the people that are creative, passionate, and smart to make it all happen and work together to make it happen. It's not just on the engineering team, it's on the marketing side, it's on the sales side, it's on the biz dev side. There's all these units that we're working together as a cohesive unit, and it's like, really, just to be cheesy, it's like our team is my favorite part. And so for the upcoming year, really what I'm looking forward to is obviously the continuation of the technological vision for HarperDB. So we now have a very strong foundation. And so building off of that, so making the distributed nature of HarperDB more enhanced. So with sharding, enabling true distributed querying, and then some boring things, but are really important to me, like backup import built into HarperDB. Like I'm looking forward to that because that cycles over to Zach's side of the world, which is distribution mechanisms. And also people just spinning up net new instances based off another instance. Like there's a lot of use cases, and also just crash recovery, super boring, but like I'm super pumped to get that in there. But on top of that, the thing I'm really most looking forward is just executing on the business side and getting our product in more people's hands. Like Zach said, I have really enjoyed seeing the delight that our customers have started to have around seeing performance, seeing ease of use, and not dealing with as many of the headaches that they've dealt with in the past with data pipelines. Mm-hmm. And I think we have, some deals that I can't really talk about right now, but I think they're going to be really transformative for some big organizations. That really trickles out to people's sort of user experience in the real world. And so while it'll make companies' lives easier, it's actually going to make individual people in their homes' lives better. And my whole thought is around just a company in general is like, if you're not making something that makes people's lives better, you may want to rethink that product. And that was like our whole goal, is to make things simpler, make things more accessible. And I've really enjoyed just seeing that happen for people.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's great that both of you touched on too is seeing the reactions and feedback and how excited people get. I mean, I love, getting emails back and connecting with people that after they try out HarperDB, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this existed. This is amazing. And all these different things that people are excited about. And having our community Slack channel and the feedback board and even connecting on social media and things, I think that's been such a great way to cultivate this feedback and kind of this excitement. And it's so cool to see people's requests on the feedback board, no matter how big of a request or how small and boring it might be. It's really great to see the product team kind of prioritize that and putting that feedback into action in real time. It really does feel like everything's gotten to a point where things are moving along and just, going well. It's smoothly. It's like right now, I think everyone's super excited for the things to come in 21, but it's also important to look at all that we did this year. So
yeah, I mean, this year was it was a scary year for many reasons. But I'm super grateful that we have all been able to get through it together with grace. And, mainly, like I said, together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's important to remember too, that come January 1, it's not just going to be a completely different world. You keep seeing all these memes and things about only X amount of days in 2020. And it's like, I don't know why people think that things are just immediately going to flip. So
yeah, I know.
Probably remember that too.
I think it's, with things like vaccines and things like that, I think we're starting to see, people starting to feel some hope, that we can, and I don't have any illusions that things will go back to exactly the way they were.
Right.
Because, like we talked about earlier, just because you were doing something didn't mean it was the right way of doing things.
Right.
And so there will be a new evolution of work. There'll be a new evolution of collaboration. Also, that won't be the right thing either. Like, we're all going to keep figuring out and there's never a right thing. It's never like, okay, and we figured it out and it's done.
Right.
It's an evolving.
It's always like you solve one thing and it presents new challenges, which turn into new opportunities. That then turn into new challenges. This ever evolving cycle, and which is great, because otherwise it'd be pretty boring.
Yeah, once you hit that plateau, you just flatline, like, we did it and we're done.
I guess we turn off the lights.
Yeah, I like the undulations.
Yeah. I mean, like, I definitely feel like in the challenge mode, I definitely get like salty and grouchy. I was just in that place yesterday where, like, I was dealing with Jake and Aaron, and I apologized to them this morning because we're working through an issue, and I just was like, I'm just over this. But like, getting through it, you're like, okay, we solved the problem, we made our product better, we did this together. But like, I definitely, in the moment, I'm just like, why do I have to do this?
Everyone has moments. That's fair.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. This has all been really interesting. And even though I've heard kind of the founder story before, and we've had discussions, I learn something new every time. So it's fun and interesting for me. And I think it will be for other people too. I just have one more question.
Can I ask you a question before I'm going to turn the tables? What are you most proud of from this past year? I'm just the same question you asked us. I'm curious, like, as someone that's outside of the engineering team, I want to get that, like, sort of flip perspective, maybe what are you most excited about from this past year and then going into the new year?
Yeah. Well, not to be a copycat, but I was thinking about that earlier today, and mine also what I've been most excited about is around the cloud release. I think, as you both mentioned, there was so much work put into building that and getting content ready and product awareness, and it's been so cool to see our user numbers climb pretty steadily. I mean, it seems like as of late, it's been every single day, just a steady climb of new people trying it out. Repeat customers. There's of course some people once in a while that go in there and sign up for the studio, register through the studio, and then never even spin up an instance.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what I do also is trying to connect with our users and figure out where was the roadblock, why didn't you spin
Mm-hmm.
up an instance, or what are you thinking? And there's always going to be that. I think sometimes people are just curious. I've gotten a lot of responses of, oh, I didn't have time to check it out. But the most rewarding part is that when people do, as I mentioned, the feedback has been so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
If there's ever complaints or any negative responses, it's not usually something that's actually about the product, or it's something where it's like, oh, hey, let's just point you to the answer to this. Maybe you just misunderstood. We actually can do that, or we do have the functionality for that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been super fun. It's been so cool to connect with the developer community. With me not having a software developer background, I've learned a lot this year. And then just getting more content and resources out there, I think has been super helpful. Just getting our live stream events, our written tutorials and content, and all these things. Now this new podcast, I think, will be a fun additional resource. So that's what I'm most excited about. And just, doubling what we're doing now, I think doubling that going into next year is going to be awesome.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. You've done such a great job of just fostering our community, and I think you deserve some credit for having a #1 article on D-Zone earlier this week too.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when I go into meetings with you and you explain everything so well and fluently, like you're really technical, and I'm just like, she knows these things. And I mean, you might know the words and you might not know exactly what's happening underneath those words, but you've been a great evangelist in all the meetings, and
make it. Well, thanks, guys. That's super nice. And yeah, I mean, as you said, Kyle, I think that the whole reason this process and experience has been so enjoyable is just because of our team and how passionate people are, and just how great things are moving along. Even when there's a bump in the road, it's like everyone stays pretty positive. So I think that has an amazing effect. Awesome. Well, should I ask my one final question? We can
let's do it.
Quick one.
Yeah, hit me. Yeah, we're doing fine on time.
So yeah, my last question was just less HarperDB related, and just either what's your favorite programming language currently, and or what other tools and technologies are you currently excited about or are currently making your life easier, or something that's coming out in 2021 that you've been watching?
Kyle, you kick this one off.
All right, I'll do it. HarperDB is written in Node.js. I think it's definitely my favorite current language. But I, over the last couple of years, have not had a lot of time to really learn a new language. But like the underpinnings of Node is C and C++. And there have been some awesome libraries that we're using. Like I said, LMDB for facilitates our data storage. C, C++, and I'm like, I think I need to revisit. My very first programming class was a C class, and I need to. I really want to like get back into like C and C++. It'll help me understand more of what's going on under the hood of like our core framework. From a technology perspective, I've been really intrigued with a product called Nats, which is a message broker They're doing some really cool things around like distributed messaging in multi-tenancy environments, and also multi-regional global messaging. Really interested to see what they're doing that, especially in regards to like message persistence. I find it a very interesting competitor to Kafka, and especially in a much easier way to manage from a DevOps perspective. So that's something I'm really interested. They have a new release, I think it's coming out at the end of this year, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of that release. It seems really feature packed. And yeah, both Jackson and I are kind of keeping our eyes on that. Another programming language I'd like also keep threatening myself to learn is Go. Just because its Go routines seem really efficient. I think it would be I think I could learn some new patterns through learning that language just from personal development. Yeah, that's like some key things for me so far.
Awesome.
Zachary?
Yeah. So most of my time is spent in development operations. My favorite, I've been an advocate for containerization since Kyle and Steven and I were at Fizzle. Docker was not even production ready at that time, but I began using HashiCorp's Packer for Docker and VMs, and I have been holding on tight to the Docker containerization paradigm. And with that, I have fallen up into an abstraction layer that helps orchestrate containerization deployments. And Kubernetes has been the leader in orchestrating containerizations, as well as abstracting cloud providers' infrastructure. So now you can have Kubernetes clusters in AWS, you can have Kubernetes clusters in GCP, Google Cloud Platform, or Azure, and the Kubernetes cluster is somewhat homogeneous across all those, so you can deploy your containers without writing directly to that particular cloud provider's API. That is just a powerful tool for development operations and deployments and configuring large-scale applications and large-scale deployments. It's just been neat to watch a technology go from not production ready to it's the hot word of the new DevOps headlines. So that has been one of my favorite things. I think I usually say HashiCorp as a technology, they put out a lot of great development operation projects. Terraform is a great project. They did a Vault, which is a key store, is a neat project for managing your encryption and decryption keys, your security keys to get in and out of your applications or your terminals, for that matter. And that's kind of where I've been heads down. Like Kyle said, we have been extremely heads down. I don't look up too much from these technologies besides some of the headlines that come up about the new offering that a new cloud provider provided. And a lot of the new cloud providers are actually providing their own Kubernetes deployments. So like one of my recent endeavors has been to get the new HarperDB Kubernetes one-click deployment on DigitalOcean. They provide a framework for going in and clicking a Kubernetes application that then deploys on a Kubernetes cluster within DigitalOcean, and HarperDB will be up and running in that cluster with the click of a button. So this has been a good year for me and the containerization realm. My knowledge of just kind of sampling knowledge throughout time has accumulated to a group of knowledge for these endeavors, and now I get to apply it, which is awesome.
Great. Yeah, that all makes sense. And it's that just reminded me, Zach, Kaylin and I and Jake were just talking earlier about Kaylin's sort of explained by a non-developer series that she's been doing in the blog writing. And I think that they decided that her next topic would be containers. And
oh, cool.
Jake was saying definitely
nice.
a topic that's often misunderstood and that a lot of people, maybe throw around and don't fully get it. So I think that'll definitely be helpful for me. That's for sure.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Great. Well, this has been super fun, guys. Thanks again for taking the time to do this. And as I said, this has been super interesting for me. I'm excited for kicking off our podcast. And if anyone's listening and ever interested in being a guest speaker, we're hoping to have lots of different speakers and topics featured next year. So don't hesitate to reach out. But yeah, appreciate it, Zach and Kyle. And Kyle, I forgot to compliment your cool orange. Is it orange plaid blazer that you're wearing?
It's red plaid. You also, hang on one second. So thank you. It's not just the blazer.
Oh, it has matching pants. Slowly moving the standing
pants
down.
Nice. And then I also just bought Newton. Damn it. Hang on.
The shoes too.
So Newton running.
Oh,
they have the red plaid Newton running. Oh my God, those are epic.
I
need
awesome.
those.
And I'm also wearing a belt that has Sasquatches on it. So I don't get out at all.
Well, I know not everyone can see, what I'm seeing because it's going to be probably audio only. So I just had to compliment that. That's pretty sweet. Maybe we'll snap a picture and make that the face of the podcast.
You should make that
Joy took a picture of me before this, and I can send that to you if you want to see it.
Love it. Well, hey, thanks again, guys. I think this was perfect, and we will, I guess, see you next time.
Awesome.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margo.
Good seeing your faces.
Have a good one.
Take care, everybody. Bye.